My sister convinced my parents to sign their house over to her and laughed, "Now you have nowhere to live." I thought she won until the lawyer smirked and said, "Actually, that house was never theirs to give." When she heard who the real owner was, she collapsed in shock. I was standing in my parents' living room staring at my sister as she smirked at me. Her arms were crossed, her head tilted slightly, that smug little smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She always looked like that when she thought she had one. "Well," she said, dragging the word out like she was savoring it, "looks like you're out of luck. Mom and Dad signed the house over to me this morning. It's mine now." I felt like the floor had just been ripped out from under me. This was my childhood home, the house where I took my first steps, where we celebrated birthdays, where I sat with my mom in the kitchen on late nights talking about life. And now my sister was looking me dead in the eye, gloating as she told me that she owned it, that I had nowhere to live. She even laughed, a full triumphant laugh. "You should have been smarter," she said. "You should have known better." I couldn't believe it. I turned to my parents searching for some kind of explanation, some kind of denial. But my mom wouldn't look at me. My dad just sighed and rubbed his temple, avoiding my gaze. They knew they had done it willingly. I clenched my fists. "Why would you do this?" My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. "Why would you give her the house? You know I live here. You know I've been the one taking care of everything." My mom finally looked at me, but there was no guilt in her eyes. Just exhaustion. "She's family," she said. "She's my family too," I snapped. "That's my house as much as it is yours." My sister snorted. "Was," she corrected, "not anymore." I had worked my whole life to keep this house running. When my dad got sick, I was the one who drove him to his appointments. When my mom couldn't handle the bills, I stepped up. I had poured my time, my money, my effort into keeping this place standing. And now my sister, who had never lifted a finger for anyone but herself, had taken it from me. I gritted my teeth. "This isn't over," I said. She just rolled her eyes. "Oh, it is. Legally the house is mine now. You can't do anything about it. And honestly, I think it's time you found your own place. You're what, almost 40? It's pathetic that you're still living here." My hands were shaking. I could barely breathe. She had no idea what she had just done. And she had no idea what was coming for her, because what she didn't know, what none of them had even bothered to look into, was that this house was never actually theirs to give. And the moment the lawyer smirked, I knew I had already won. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't scream or demand answers. I just stood there, staring at my sister as she grinned like she had won some great battle. Because she thought she had. She thought she had played the game perfectly, that she had manipulated our parents just right, that she had outsmarted me and taken the one thing that mattered most. She had no idea what she had actually done. I took a slow breath. "All right," I said, my voice steady. "If that's how you want to play this." Her smile faltered for half a second, but she covered it up fast. "Oh, it's not about how I want to play," she said. "The paperwork is already done. You can whine all you want, but you can't change legal ownership." She really thought she had me cornered. I turned on my heel and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't storm out in a rage. I just walked, got in my car, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Because while my sister might have spent months scheming, she had made one massive mistake. She hadn't checked the actual ownership of the house. The lawyer's smirk. My lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, was an older man, the kind of guy who had seen every trick in the book. When I told him what had happened, he just leaned back in his chair and folded his hands over his stomach. "Let me get this straight," he said. "Your parents signed over the house to your sister?" I nodded. "This morning. And they think they had the legal right to do that?" I nodded again. That was when Mr. Reynolds smirked. A slow, knowing smirk. The kind that told me I was about to win. "Actually," he said, tapping his pen against the desk, "that house was never theirs to give." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" He opened his drawer, pulled out a thick folder, and dropped it onto the desk in front of me. "You want to know who actually owns that house?" I stared at him, my heart pounding. He flipped open the file and pointed to a document. "You do?" I blinked. "What?" "Your grandfather left it to you in his will." He slid the paperwork closer. "Legally, that house has been yours since he passed away. Your parents never owned it. They had the right to live there, but they never had the right to transfer ownership." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All these years I had assumed my parents owned the house. It had never even crossed my mind to check the deed. I had just trusted that things were the way they seemed. But my grandfather, who had always favored me over my sister, who had seen what kind of person she was, had left the house to me. And my sister had no idea. I let out a slow breath. "So what happens now?" Mr. Reynolds' smirk widened. Now we have some fun." My sister's world starts crumbling. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I stayed at a friend's place and let my lawyer handle everything. The next morning, he filed an official cease and desist order, preventing my sister from making any changes to the property. That meant no selling, no renovations, no moving in. And that's when she finally called me. I didn't answer the first 3 times. On the 4th call I picked up. "What the hell did you do?" she screeched. I leaned back in my chair. "What do you mean?" She was furious. "The lawyer just called me. He said I can't touch the house. He said it's not mine." I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her sweat. Then I said, "That's because it never was." She went silent. "You really should have checked the ownership before you pulled your little stunt," I continued. "Because legally, that house has been mine for years." "No," she whispered, "that's not possible." "Oh, it is. I have the papers to prove it. You see, Grandpa left it to me. Not Mom and Dad, and definitely not you." Her breath hitched. I could practically hear her mind racing. No, that's a lie. That's not true. Mom and Dad, they didn't own it," I cut in. "They thought they did, but they were wrong." I heard a small gasp on the other end. I wasn't sure if it was from shock or pure rage. "Now," I said, my voice calm, "you have 2 choices. 1, you admit you screwed up, back off, and we pretend this never happened. Or 2, I paused, you push your luck and we take this to court." "You wouldn't," she whispered. I laughed. "Oh, I absolutely would. And trust me, if this goes to court you're going to lose." For the first time in her life my sister had nothing to say. She had spent so long playing her little games, twisting people against each other, manipulating our parents into giving her what she wanted. And now she was realizing she had lost before she even started. My sister's meltdown the next morning. She showed up at my lawyer's office. She stormed in, red-faced and wild-eyed, demanding that something be done. She yelled. She threatened. She even tried to claim that I had somehow stolen the house. Mr. Reynolds just sat there, perfectly calm, letting her dig her own grave. Finally, when she had finished ranting, he leaned forward, tapped the legal documents on his desk and said, "I'd recommend you leave before you embarrass yourself any further." That's when it happened. She collapsed into the chair, her face going pale. For the first time in her life she looked defeated. "This isn't fair," she whispered. I crossed my arms. "Neither is trying to steal a house from your own brother." She looked up at me, tears brimming in her eyes. "But I already told people the house was mine. I made plans." I tilted my head. "That sounds like a you problem." She opened her mouth then closed it again. And that's when I knew she had finally realized it. She had lost. For a few days my sister went silent. No phone calls, no texts, nothing. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had finally accepted defeat. I should have known better. Because when people like her lose, they don't just walk away. They find new ways to twist the knife. And my sister? She was about to go lower than I ever thought possible. It started with my parents. They showed up at my place, my house, early one morning, knocking like it was still theirs to enter. I considered ignoring them, but I knew they wouldn't leave. So I opened the door. My mom looked at me like I had betrayed her. "How could you do this to your sister?" I let out a dry laugh. "Are you serious?" "She's family," my dad muttered, shaking his head. "You're really going to kick her out over some technicality?" I stared at them, trying to wrap my head around the sheer audacity of what they were saying. "A technicality?" I repeated. "She tried to steal my house." "She didn't steal it," my mom snapped. "We gave it to her. And you never had the right to give it away." I shot back. "Do you even hear yourselves? You tried to hand over something that never belonged to you." They didn't respond, because deep down they knew I was right. But then my mom tried another angle. She softened her voice, sighed like she was the real victim here, and said, "Look, your sister made a mistake, okay? But you don't have to punish her for it. Just let her stay." I almost laughed in her face. "Let her stay?" I repeated. "In my house?" "Yes." My dad crossed his arms. "It's not like you're married or have kids. You don't need all this space." Oh, so that's what this was? They had decided that I didn't deserve the house. That my sister, the golden child, needed it more than I did, and they expected me to just let it happen. I took a deep breath, feeling my blood boil. "Let me make something very clear. She is never setting foot in this house again, and neither are you." I showed up with my lawyer, completely calm. She showed up looking smug, like she was sure the judge was going to see things her way. And for the first 5 minutes, she actually managed to keep up the act. She talked about how our parents had given her the house, how I was refusing to leave, how I was making things difficult out of spite. The judge listened patiently. Then my lawyer stood up, and he laid out every single fact. He showed the real deed to the house, proving I had been the rightful owner for years. He showed the will from my grandfather, leaving it only to me. And then he dropped the bombshell. He presented the fake eviction notice my sister had filed. And the judge? Oh, the judge did not like that. She turned to my sister, her expression unreadable. "Miss, are you aware that falsifying legal documents is a serious offense?" My sister's smirk vanished. She turned white. "WLI, you filed an eviction notice against the legal owner of the house," the judge continued. "That is fraud." My sister stammered, looking desperately at my parents who were sitting behind her. But for the first time in her life, even they couldn't help her because she had lost again. But this time she wasn't just losing the house, she was about to lose everything. The courtroom was dead silent. My sister looked like she was about to faint. My parents sat frozen behind her, their faces pale. The judge tapped her pen against the desk. "Miss, you knowingly filed false legal documents in an attempt to remove the lawful owner from their home. That is a criminal offense." My sister opened her mouth but no words came out. The judge continued. "I'm ruling in favor of the defendant. The house legally belongs to him. Furthermore, I'm referring this case for potential charges of fraud and perjury." That was it. That was the moment everything crumbled for her. She turned to me, eyes wide with panic. "You wouldn't let them charge me, right?" I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Why shouldn't I?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I tilted my head. You laughed in my face when you thought you won. You told me I had nowhere to live." She went silent, because she knew I was right. The judge finalized the ruling, dismissing my sister's bogus case and making it very clear that she would be investigated. But I wasn't done. My parents get what they deserve after court. My parents cornered me outside. My mom looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You can't do this to her," I scoffed. "She did it to herself. She's facing fraud charges," my dad snapped. "And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "I didn't tell her to forge legal documents. I didn't tell her to try and steal from me. That was her choice." "But she's your sister," my mom pleaded. I clenched my jaw. "And I'm your son. But that didn't stop you from trying to kick me out of my own house, did it?" They had nothing to say to that, so I hit them with the final blow. "You know what? Since you're so worried about her, why don't you take her in?" I said, tilting my head. "Because she sure as hell isn't coming back to my house." My mom gasped. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I would." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my notes. In fact, I already had my lawyer draft up a formal eviction notice for both of you. My dad's face turned red. "You can't evict your own parents." "Why not?" I shot back. "You didn't seem to have a problem trying to do it to me." Silence. My mom started crying, shaking her head in disbelief. "Where will we go?" I shrugged. "That's not my problem," because the truth was they had made their choice. They had chosen my sister over me. They had tried to take my home. And now? Now they had nothing. The eviction went through. My parents tried to fight it, but they had no legal ground to stand on. They packed up their things and left, dragging my sister with them. They ended up moving into a tiny apartment on the other side of town, far from the nice, spacious house they thought they would live in forever. As for my sister, she did get charged with fraud. The court didn't go easy on her either. She ended up with a hefty fine and a criminal record. And the best part? That perfect, successful image she had built for herself, the one she used to manipulate everyone around her, gone. No more bragging about her big win. No more looking down on me. Because now when people talked about her, it wasn't about how smart or clever she was. It was about how she tried to steal from her own brother, and failed spectacularly. The sweetest revenge. I still live in my house. My house. It's quiet now, peaceful. No more fights, no more betrayal. Just me, finally enjoying what was always meant to be mine. And my parents? My sister? I don't hear from them much these days, but every now and then I get updates. I hear that my sister is struggling to find work with her criminal record, that my parents regret choosing her over me, that they whisper about how they lost everything. And you know what? I don't feel bad, not even a little, because they tried to destroy my life and all they did was ruin their own.